She didn't ask for money. She just whispered, almost timidly, "Is there anything left?" The words hung in the air like a fragile hope, barely audible but heavy with meaning. Imagine this moment. A pregnant homeless woman, worn and weary, eyes filled with both exhaustion and a faint glimmer of hope, stepping hesitantly toward a man dressed impeccably in a tailored suit. A millionaire, busy with his world, seemingly far removed from hers. The camera catches the stark contrast. His polished shoes against her bare, dirt-streaked feet. His confident posture versus her hesitant, fragile stance. It's a touching encounter that speaks volumes without many words. He could have walked away. After all, he was late for an important meeting, wrapped up in his busy, cynical life. But something about her gaze stopped him. Maybe it was the raw humanity in her eyes. A silent story of struggle, courage, and need that pierced through his indifference. Instead of dismissing her, he asked one simple question: "What do you need?" That moment wasn't just an act of kindness. It was a life-changing moment, a turning point that neither of them expected. And just like that, two worlds collided and everything changed. This wasn't your typical viral story or social experiment made for clicks. It was real, raw, and deeply human. The millionaire who had long believed in meritocracy found himself face to face with a poor woman whose life was unraveling in ways no paycheck could fix. This was empathy in action. Unexpected kindness that defied expectations and sparked a transformation story neither of them saw coming. Sometimes we see people, but we don't truly look at them. This story begins with a man who had it all, or so it seemed. A millionaire, successful and wealthy, who built his life on hard work, discipline, and a firm belief in meritocracy. He thought the world was straightforward. If you worked hard, you'd succeed. But despite his fortune, he was in a cynical phase, disillusioned, feeling empty inside. Money hadn't filled the void he didn't even know existed. One afternoon, in the midst of a busy city that never sleeps, his routine was shattered. A woman, pregnant and homeless, caught his eye. She was dirty, barefoot, and vulnerable. Yet there was something unmistakably human in her gaze, something that made him stop. She looked at him not with demand, but with quiet hope, asking if there was anything left. In that moment, his carefully constructed beliefs were challenged. The rich man who thought he had seen everything was about to learn a lesson in generosity, empathy, and true humanity. Her story wasn't about charity or pity. It was about survival, dignity, and the tough choices life forced upon her. This poor woman's journey from hardship to hope would intertwine with his in unexpected ways. Helping the homeless is rarely a neat story, and this one was no exception. But it was deeply inspiring, revealing how an act of kindness, when rooted in genuine empathy, can lead to profound transformation for both the giver and the receiver. As we dive deeper into this emotional story, we invite you to see beyond appearances, to feel the power of unexpected kindness, and to explore what it truly means to help another human being. Because sometimes the life-changing moments happen when you least expect them, and sometimes it takes just one question to change everything. He was just trying to get through another hectic Tuesday. Between meetings, deadlines, and phone calls piling up, the last thing on his mind was stopping. But as he stepped out of his sleek black car to grab a coffee, he noticed a figure sitting quietly near the door, thin blanket, swollen belly, eyes that carried both fear and fire. It wasn't just a pregnant, homeless woman sitting there. It was a presence that interrupted everything. He hesitated. Maybe it was the way she didn't beg, didn't plead, just asked softly, "Something left?" That small question carried weight he hadn't expected. Sometimes, it's not the volume of someone's voice that speaks the loudest. It's the stillness in their silence. He wasn't proud to admit it, but he'd passed by dozens of poor women before. Homeless pregnancy? Tragic, sure, but distant. This time was different. This wasn't some typical social experiment or viral story he'd watch and scroll past. This was now right in front of him. And in that 1 second, that something left echoed like thunder through the noise of his schedule. It was more than a question, it was a mirror. He glanced at his watch, already 5 minutes late. But for some reason, his hand stopped before opening the cafe door. He told himself he had a full day, that this wasn't his problem. And yet, her eyes, they didn't ask for pity. They didn't even expect kindness. Just acknowledgement. The millionaire had helped others before. Big donations, charity galas, neatly packaged acts of kindness. But this was different. Real, raw, human. It was a touching encounter that felt less like charity and more like a challenge. And isn't it wild how fast life can change you from observer to participant? One moment you're a rich man just grabbing coffee. The next, you're face to face with a woman whose reality you can't ignore. She wasn't trying to make him feel guilty. She wasn't even making eye contact anymore. But something had already shifted inside him. And here's the thing. Sometimes the most emotional stories don't begin with a loud cry, but with a soft whisper that hits you in the gut. Like the world slowing down for just long enough to ask, what kind of person are you going to be today? He looked back again. Still there. Belly rising beneath a thin coat. A small bag of belongings beside her. Like her entire life had been reduced to a corner of concrete. He knew better than to romanticize homelessness. Helping the homeless wasn't about feel-good moments, it was about decisions. Discomfort. Facing what most people choose to ignore. And yet, in her quiet stillness, there was something almost dignified. This wasn't just another transformation story waiting to be posted online. This was a life, a heartbeat, and maybe, just maybe, a life-changing moment for both of them. What caught him wasn't her desperation. It was her restraint. No signs, no sob story, just that one question. And in that pause, the millionaire felt something stir. Empathy? Maybe. But more than that, it was humanity. Raw and undeniable. That reminder that no matter how polished your shoes are, the ground beneath you is the same as hers. Helping the homeless doesn't always start with grand gestures. Sometimes it starts with noticing, with really seeing someone when you could have just looked away. It's easy to write people off, to say, well, maybe she made bad choices, or why doesn't she go to a shelter? But life isn't always that neat. Not every poor woman you see on the street has a map back to safety. And sometimes, the ones who look the most broken are the ones holding themselves together in ways we can't even imagine. He felt that now, that subtle courage in her voice, that haunting echo of something left. Maybe she wasn't just asking for food. Maybe she was asking if there was any kindness left in the world. You know, there's something sacred about being seen, about being acknowledged, even when you have nothing to offer back. That moment between them wasn't about money. It wasn't even about the juice in his hand. It was about connection. A reminder that being a millionaire means nothing if you forget how to be a human being. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but he knew he couldn't walk away this time. Not this time. And deep down, maybe a part of him was asking the same question. Is there something left of me? So instead of stepping forward, he paused. One foot still on the sidewalk. Coffee forgotten. Schedule crumbling. His heart louder than his phone. And while she looked away, preparing to be ignored again, he took a step closer. Not because he had all the answers, but because, in that instant, he realized she might be holding a piece of the question he'd been avoiding his whole life. And that's where this true story really begins. She wasn't always like this. That's the part most people miss. Before becoming the pregnant homeless woman on the corner, she was just another young woman chasing dreams. Small ones, big ones, ordinary ones. She had a backpack full of textbooks, playlists for long bus rides, and plans that involved college and a future with meaning. Her smile used to be louder than her silence. Her mom used to call her sunshine, even on bad days. But then, like many stories we pretend not to hear, life slipped through the cracks. And nobody noticed until it was too late. She used to wake up at 6 a.m. to help her little brother with breakfast before school. She had a part-time job at a diner. Always tired, always smiling. When you looked into her eyes back then, you saw hope, tired hope, but hope nonetheless. And now, when the millionaire looked into her eyes, he saw that same hope, but buried beneath layers of betrayal, loss, and exhaustion. That's what makes this an emotional story, not just a situation. You can't measure someone's worth by what they've lost. Sometimes the most valuable stories are the ones we've stopped asking about. She didn't plan on being a poor woman living on the streets. Who does? Life has a twisted way of testing the people with the most potential. First, her mom got sick. Medical bills, debt, dropping out of college. Then came a boyfriend who promised love but left when things got real. No warning, no note, just gone. And when you're already standing on the edge, it doesn't take much to fall. Her journey into homelessness wasn't about laziness. It was about being let down one too many times. That's something most people don't talk about in viral stories. She didn't want pity, still doesn't. That's the thing. And it's why her story hits different. Because she carried herself with this invisible armor. Not pride, not denial, just the last bit of strength she had. When he saw her, he didn't see a statistic. He saw the same strength his mother had when things got rough. That invisible resilience, the kind only someone who's been through it recognizes. It wasn't just about a rich man helping a homeless pregnant woman. It was about one soul seeing another past the surface. You know what's crazy? Sometimes the people who've been abandoned the most are the ones who give the most grace. She didn't blame the world. She didn't lash out. She just adjusted. Like so many women who fall through the cracks. Too proud to beg, too tired to fight. This wasn't just a transformation story. It was a quiet reminder of how close we all are to the edge. And how easy it is to pretend it only happens to them. But really, it could be any of us. A job loss, a diagnosis, one wrong turn. And just like that, you're asking, something left. She once had a teacher who told her she could be anything. And she believed it. She used to write stories, poems, little songs on napkins during lunch breaks. Somewhere inside her, all that creativity still existed, but now, buried beneath survival. The millionaire could sense it, like catching the faint smell of roses through smoke. She wasn't just asking for food. She was asking to be remembered as someone who mattered. Not just a poor woman on the sidewalk, but someone who once had dreams. And maybe still did. And if we're being real, how many people do you walk past every day without knowing what's behind their eyes? That's what makes empathy powerful. It forces you to imagine the invisible chapters of someone's life. The things they don't say, but that linger in their posture, their expression, their silence. That's what the millionaire began to feel. Not just sympathy, but connection. Because every act of kindness that sticks, it begins with imagination, the ability to look at someone and wonder who they were, and who they still could be. There's something deeply human about wanting to be seen, not for your mistakes or your scars, but for your essence. That was her. She didn't want charity. She wanted dignity, and that's a massive difference. The kind of difference that turns a helping hand into a life-changing moment. And the more he stood there, listening to the noise of the city fade behind him, the more he realized, this wasn't a coincidence. This was one of those unexpected kindness moments that the universe sets up when you're finally ready to pay attention. And so he stayed. He didn't just look. He saw. Not with judgment, not with an agenda, but with that rare kind of attention that makes someone feel whole again. Because before you fix anything, you have to see it for what it is. And what he saw behind her eyes was someone who hadn't given up yet. Not really, not completely. And just like that, something inside him began to shift. Her fall wasn't dramatic. There was no headline, no public collapse. Just a slow fade. One day she had a warm bed and cheap coffee in the morning. The next, she was watching her reflection in a store window, wondering if she still looked like herself. That's how homelessness happens more often than people realize. Not with noise, but with silence. The moment she saw the 2 lines on that pregnancy test, it felt like the world paused. And then everything around her crumbled. She was a pregnant homeless woman before the label even stuck to her skin. Started with hope, oddly enough. She thought maybe this baby would give her a reason to keep fighting. But reality doesn't hand out grace so easily. The guy? Gone. Ghosted. Just like that. Not ready to be a father, he said. As if she was. Rent went unpaid. Friends stopped answering. She stretched every dollar until it bled. And when that was over, she sold the few things that still held meaning. Helping the homeless sounds noble until you're the one deciding whether to buy a sandwich or save for prenatal vitamins. She tried the shelters. One was full. Another turned her away for not having ID. One night she slept near a bus station, using her jacket as a blanket. Cop told her to move. Find somewhere else, ma'am. But where do you go when everywhere is somewhere else? You learn quickly that being a poor woman on the street while pregnant turns you invisible in plain sight. People look through you, not at you. And the worst part? You start looking through yourself, too. Still, she made a choice. She chose not to end it. Not the pregnancy. Not her own story. And that decision, so private, so painful, wasn't out of religious guilt or blind optimism. It was out of something much quieter. Faith. Not in people. Not even in herself some days. But in the possibility that there was still something better ahead. That kind of courage? That's not found in inspirational videos. That's the real stuff, the gritty kind you only discover when everything comfortable is gone. She found ways to survive. A church basement that served soup 3 times a week. A woman named Connie who once gave her a ride to the clinic without asking questions. A discarded copy of The Alchemist she read cover to cover under a bridge. She held on to little things like that. Because when you're helping the homeless, or when you are homeless, what keeps you going isn't the big rescues. It's the small mercies. The moments that whisper, "Not yet. Don't give up just yet." Ever notice how people romanticize struggle once it's over? They call it a transformation story, a testimony. But when you're living it, there's nothing poetic about waking up cold, pregnant, and alone. She didn't feel brave. She felt tired. She didn't want a miracle. She just wanted relief. A hot shower. A bed that didn't come with fear. Even a clean spoon felt like luxury. That's how low the bar got. And still, she got up every day and tried again. That's what made her unstoppable. The hardest part? Staying human. When people treat you like you're less, it starts messing with your mind. Like maybe you don't deserve kindness, or softness, or even eye contact. But she fought for her humanity in small ways. Washing her face in gas station bathrooms. Saying thank you even when no one listened. Holding her belly like a promise she wasn't ready to break. Helping the homeless? It starts with recognizing the war they fight just to feel like people again. The millionaire would never have known all this just by looking. That's the danger of assumptions. We think we know someone's entire story in 5 seconds. But what she'd endured could fill volumes. The shame, the fear, the cold. The fact that she was still standing at all? That was the miracle. And while others saw a poor woman asking for scraps, he was beginning to see something else. Resilience that most of the wealthy couldn't imagine. And whether he knew it yet or not, his life was already being rewritten just by being near her. And yet, in all that struggle, she never begged, never screamed. She just waited, watching, hoping someone might notice, might care. She didn't need a savior. She needed a break. Just one. And now, for the first time in weeks, someone was standing still in front of her instead of walking past. Maybe, just maybe, something was finally about to shift. His first instinct was to reach into his wallet. That's how most people deal with discomfort, money. Quick fix. A way to help without really getting involved. So he pulled out a $50 bill, extended it toward her like a lifeline. But her reaction wasn't what he expected. She looked at the bill, then looked away, almost embarrassed. "No, thank you," she said quietly. "I was just wondering if you had anything left from your meal. Just a bite or two." And just like that, something inside him cracked wide open. You see, refusing money when you clearly need it, that's not pride. That's dignity. And that moment, that tiny, quiet refusal, said more about her than any sob story ever could. She wasn't trying to manipulate him. This wasn't some setup for a viral story. This was a woman, hungry and pregnant, asking only for scraps because she didn't want to feel like a burden. When we talk about acts of kindness, this is the kind that hits hardest. The ones that reveal who someone really is, even in their worst moment. Most people don't realize how dehumanizing money can feel when it's handed out like pity. It's not that she didn't need it, of course she did. But what she needed more was connection. Something simple, real. And in that refusal, the millionaire saw a glimpse of the woman she used to be. The student, the sister, the daughter. The kind of person who still believed food shared was more meaningful than cash thrown. She wasn't asking for a handout. She was asking for presence. He paused, unsure what to say. He'd given money to countless charities, funded shelters, even sponsored emotional story campaigns online. But none of that prepared him for this, being confronted face-to-face with real humility. He thought about all the times he'd bought dinner and wasted half of it. The drinks he left half-finished. The food that ended up in the trash while someone like her sat nearby, stomach turning, just hoping someone might offer what they couldn't finish. Helping the homeless was starting to feel a lot more personal. You want to know what real wealth looks like? It's not in your account. It's in how you respond when someone says, "Just a little if you have some left." That's what he realized standing there, holding a sandwich suddenly too rich to eat. He broke it in half, handed it to her without a word. She took it gently like it was fragile. And for a moment, everything slowed down. The cars, the city noise, even his thoughts. It wasn't a life-changing moment yet, but it was the beginning of something neither of them could explain. And here's what's wild: when you lead with compassion instead of cash, something changes in the air. There's less shame, more connection. Less power dynamic, more shared humanity. This wasn't about a rich man helping a poor woman. It was about two people meeting halfway. And that's what makes this such a touching encounter. Because it shows us how simple generosity can bypass ego and land straight in the heart. Sometimes a sandwich means more than $100. She didn't devour the food. She savored it. Bit by bit, careful, grateful. And that hit him hard. When you're used to abundance, it's easy to forget what hunger feels like. What it means to make each bite count. And in watching her eat, he learned more about life in 5 minutes than any book or business meeting had ever taught him. He realized she wasn't a problem to solve. She was a person to respect. That's when helping the homeless becomes something deeper. It becomes a mirror. He sat down beside her. Just like that. No pretense. No lecture. No performance. "What's your name?" he asked. She blinked, surprised by the question. No one had asked her that in weeks. "Maya," she said, and for the first time in a long while, her voice sounded less tired. A small, human moment. A true story unfolding without cameras, likes, or applause. Just two people sharing food, and maybe something even more important. Time. And as they sat together, in the middle of a city that never stops moving, he began to wonder how long she had been invisible. How many other Mayas he had passed by without noticing. And quietly, without knowing what came next, he decided he wasn't going to let her be invisible anymore. There's a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It sits quietly, even when the world is loud, even when life has taken everything but the breath in your lungs. That's what he saw in her. This wasn't just a pregnant homeless woman with nowhere to go. This was someone holding herself together with invisible threads of self-respect. Dignity is funny like that. It survives in places where nothing else does. She wasn't polished. She wasn't smiling. But she wasn't defeated either. And that stuck with him more than any emotional story he'd ever heard. Most people associate dignity with suits and speeches. But this was a poor woman who still tucked in her shirt when it was torn. Who wiped her face in the reflection of a gas station window. Who said please and thank you even when her stomach ached. That kind of quiet power is hard to explain unless you've seen it. Or lived it. And sitting next to her, he realized she had something he'd lost along the way. Grace under fire. He had the money, but she had the poise of someone who'd survived without it. He'd built a world on performance, business meetings, handshakes, awards, headlines. But here, in this raw moment, none of that mattered. She wasn't impressed by his watch, didn't flinch at his name, and for once, he wasn't trying to impress anyone. It was strange, freeing even, to just be there. No labels, no millionaire helping the homeless for applause. Just one human seeing another. That's the difference between giving out of guilt and giving out of empathy. Only one of those transforms you. He offered to buy her something warm to eat inside the cafe. Not fast food. not something disposable. A place with real tables, clean silverware, a small act of kindness maybe, but for her, felt like an invitation back into society. She hesitated, unsure. "Are you sure?" she asked. "You don't have to." But he nodded gently. No pressure, just the open door. And that's what kindness looks like when it's done right. It respects choice. It doesn't rescue. It invites. They sat down, and something incredible happened. She didn't look smaller in that chair. She looked seen. And as the waitress came over, she ordered with hesitation, like she was waiting for someone to take the menu away. But he didn't flinch, didn't rush her. He listened, and in that space, simple, warm, quiet, something began to rebuild. Dignity, when given a safe place to breathe, returns. Not all at once, but in pieces. This wasn't just a touching encounter anymore. It was a healing one. You ever notice how people act different when they're treated like they matter? That was her now. Her shoulders eased. Her eyes looked up more. She sipped her coffee slowly, like it was sacred. And he watched, realizing this moment had nothing to do with money. It was about presence. It's easy to drop cash into a donation box. Harder to sit beside someone and give them your time. That's when helping the homeless becomes real. When it's not about solving, but seeing. She didn't tell her full story right away, but she didn't need to. The way she carried herself said enough. And he respected that. Sometimes we forget that broken people still have boundaries, still have pride. She wasn't begging to be saved. She was choosing to be still. That kind of emotional story doesn't make headlines, but it should, because it teaches us that generosity isn't loud. It's gentle, steady, like a hand that doesn't pull, but waits for yours to reach out. He saw something in her that made him uncomfortable, not because it was ugly, but because it was honest. She reflected a part of himself he'd buried. The scared, uncertain version of him that used to wonder if he'd make it. Funny how life brings those mirrors into your path. It's rarely when you're ready, but always when you need it. And as she ate quietly, he wondered, how many people walk around with this kind of quiet dignity? Never being acknowledged, never being seen? And so he didn't talk much. He just sat there, let her eat. Let the silence be soft instead of awkward. There was something sacred about it. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful moments aren't the ones filled with words, but with presence, with listening, with just staying. And deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. The conversation didn't start with heavy things. It began the way most real stories do, slowly, cautiously. He asked her how long she'd been out here. She answered softly, "A few months, maybe more." No numbers, no drama, just pieces. The kind of pieces people carry when telling the full truth feels too heavy all at once. He didn't push, just nodded, sipping his coffee, letting her lead. That's the thing with emotional stories, they're not told all at once. They're released, little by little, like steam from a pot that's been boiling too long. She shared bits of her past like she was handing him fragile glass. Her first job, her mom's laugh, the college acceptance letter she never got to use. She didn't cry. There were no theatrics. But her voice trembled slightly when she mentioned her younger brother. How she hadn't seen him since her mom passed. That's when he realized this wasn't about getting sympathy. This was about remembering. Saying it out loud so the pieces didn't vanish completely. Some people survive by forgetting. Others, like her, survive by holding on. He asked her if she had any friends left. She smiled, a bit bitterly. Most of them drifted when I couldn't keep up. Rent, calls, expectations. Her tone wasn't angry, just factual, like she'd already made peace with it. And in that moment, he felt a sting of recognition. He'd once done that too. Distanced himself from people when their lives became inconvenient. Helping the homeless didn't just mean giving money. It meant seeing your own reflection in the parts of their stories you don't want to admit. She didn't talk about the father of her baby much. Just said, he panicked, ran, as if that was enough. And maybe it was. What more was there to say? The point wasn't why he left. The point was that she stayed. chose to carry life when she could barely carry herself. He thought about that often, how people underestimate the strength it takes to choose birth over escape. This wasn't just a social experiment playing out before his eyes. This was a masterclass in silent resilience. The way she told her story made him realize something. Pain doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it's disguised in casual phrases and long pauses. She didn't dramatize. She didn't ask for anything. But every detail felt like a weight she was still carrying. A worn-out purse she clutched too tight. He admired that. Not the pain itself, but the way she walked with it without bitterness. If you've ever met someone like that, they don't need your tears. They just need your presence. She mentioned that she used to write poetry. Nothing fancy, she shrugged. Just things that rhymed when my head got too loud. He asked if she still wrote. She looked down, smiled softly. Not in a while. And he made a mental note right then. Buy her a notebook. Not as charity, as an invitation. Because healing isn't always about therapy or medication. Sometimes it starts with giving someone back a piece of themselves they thought was gone. That's what true acts of kindness do. They kept talking. Not in a rush. Not in a straight line. Her story came out in layers. Like peeling an onion without flinching at the tears. She talked about music, about how she loved to hum while walking, even if no one was listening. Sometimes I do it just so I don't forget what joy sounds like, she said. He didn't respond. Just let the words sink in. Some stories don't need commentary. They just need someone to hear them. By the time the coffee cups were empty, he realized he hadn't looked at his phone once. That was rare. For a man whose life revolved around deals and decisions, time had become currency, and he was finally spending it on something that mattered. Listening to her didn't feel like a detour anymore. Felt like the point. Like everything else was noise and this moment was clarity. It wasn't about Millionaire helps poor woman. It was about two humans finally meeting for real. And as she wrapped her coat tighter and looked out the window, he knew something was changing. Not just for her, but for him too. She was starting to trust him. Just a little. Enough to let the pieces of her story be seen, one by one. And if she was willing to keep opening up, maybe he'd find the courage to do the same. Sometimes life throws us moments that sneak up on us. Subtle yet seismic. As he listened to Maya's story, a quiet shift began stirring inside him. It wasn't just sympathy or charity. It was something deeper, empathy rooted in shared humanity. He remembered his own mother, the sacrifices she made when life was tough, the nights she stayed awake worrying about bills and food, the quiet strength she carried like armor. Suddenly, this wasn't just a rich man helping a poor woman. It was a man recognizing his own reflection in someone else's eyes. He thought back to the days when he was close to losing everything. The business failures, the loneliness, the nights wondering if he'd made the right choices. No one sees those moments in the glossy headlines, but they shape us, carve new paths through our hearts. This pregnant homeless woman was more than an emotional story. She was a living reminder that life's twists and turns don't discriminate. Sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom to see what truly matters. And he was beginning to see clearer than ever before. The beauty of this life-changing moment was in its unexpectedness. He wasn't searching for redemption that day. He was running errands, caught in his own whirlwind. But here was Maya, her fragile dignity pulling him into a story he didn't know he needed. It's funny how generosity works. Sometimes it's the one giving help who ends up changed the most. That uncomfortable feeling in his chest? That was growth knocking, asking to be let in. He realized that real kindness isn't a one-way street. It's a loop of giving and receiving, of touching and being touched. Helping the homeless was never about a checklist for him. Now, it was becoming a call to action, a test of his own humanity. How many times had he overlooked the invisible struggles around him? How often had he prioritized success over soul? This was a turning point, a moment when empathy moved from abstract idea to lived experience. He looked at Maya, no longer just a poor woman, but a person with a past, a present, and a future he was beginning to believe in. The way she carried herself despite everything was inspiring. Not in a distant, inspirational video kind of way, but in a real, gritty, this could happen to anyone way. It wasn't pity. It was respect. And it opened a door inside him that he hadn't realized was locked. Sometimes the richest people are the poorest in heart. He felt that now. Wealth without purpose felt hollow, like an empty shell. Here, in this quiet cafe, the definitions of success and failure were shifting. He wasn't just a millionaire helping a homeless pregnant woman. He was a man learning how to be human again. This was no charity event or social experiment. It was life, unfiltered, raw, and beautiful in its imperfection. He began to understand that transformation stories don't only happen to the helped. They happen to the helpers too. And this wasn't a story about saving someone. It was about two people saving each other in different ways. Maya's courage to share her story was breaking down his walls. His willingness to listen was opening hers. This was empathy in action, not just a phrase thrown around in viral stories about kindness. He felt a responsibility growing inside him, not one forced by obligation, but one fueled by connection. This moment was a call to do more than give money or temporary fixes. It was a call to truly help, to walk alongside, to see Maya not as a project, but as a person. And that's when the real journey began, for both of them. And while the city buzzed outside, time seemed to slow inside that small cafe. He knew this meeting would mark a before and after in his life. The question now wasn't what he could give, but how he could change. And little did he know, that shift was about to ripple far beyond their table. After feeling that shift, he knew it was time to act, but not in the way most people might expect. He didn't want to throw money at the problem or make a grand gesture for show. Instead, he offered something real and practical. A safe room for the night, a hot shower, clean clothes, and a medical checkup for the baby she was carrying. This wasn't about charity or pity. It was about restoring dignity, providing a foundation from which she could start rebuilding. Sometimes the smallest offers carry the heaviest meaning. The offer came gently, without pressure. He could tell she was cautious, hesitant to believe that someone could care without strings attached. "No one just helps," she whispered. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. Life had taught her to expect conditions, favors owed, or judgment in return. But he wanted to prove that kindness could be unconditional, that true generosity doesn't keep score or demand repayment. Helping the homeless isn't about control. It's about respect and humanity. She looked at him, eyes searching for hidden motives, but found none. This was different. This was real. When he described the hotel room, a clean bed, a private bathroom, it wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a symbol of hope, a break from the cold concrete where she'd been surviving. He offered clothes that weren't torn or stained, clean and comfortable, and a doctor's appointment so both mother and baby could be cared for properly. It was simple, but it meant everything. He explained he'd arranged for an assistant social worker and a lawyer to help her understand her rights and options. No surprises, no catch, just a team to support her journey forward. That was part of proving it wasn't charity, it was partnership. Sometimes people think generosity means doing everything for someone else. But the real act of kindness is empowering others to take control of their own lives again. Helping the homeless means helping them regain their voice. She still hesitated, biting her lip. Fear and mistrust are hard to shake when you've been burned before. But as he talked calmly, without pushing, something softened. The walls she'd built around herself started to crack, just a little. She asked questions not about money, but about what came next. And that was the key, offering a chance to build a future, not just a temporary fix. That's what turns a moment into a transformation story. In that moment, he realized that helping the homeless pregnant woman wasn't just a random act. It was a responsibility. And with responsibility came patience. No rush, no deadlines, just steady support, walking alongside her as she navigated this new chapter. He wasn't the hero with all the answers. He was a partner, a witness, a believer in second chances. And sometimes that's all someone needs to begin again. He made it clear he wasn't there to control her decisions. She was in charge. This was her life. That respect meant more than any gift he could offer. It was empowering her to reclaim her story, her future. It was the opposite of what she'd expected. And that reversal was healing. Sometimes the best help looks like stepping back and letting someone find their own strength again. As the conversation continued, he saw hope flickering in her eyes. A fragile but real spark. A sign that maybe, just maybe, the worst of her story was behind her. And that this offer wasn't just about a hotel or clothes or a doctor. It was about reclaiming humanity, dignity, and trust. A foundation from which both could start to build something better. And as the cafe buzzed softly around them, he knew this was more than a one-time encounter. It was the start of a journey neither of them could predict. And in that, there was a kind of magic, an unexpected kindness that could change everything. Hope can be a double-edged sword, can't it? For someone who's been living on the edge, like Maya, it's not just about dreaming. It's about fearing that dream might break her again. After months of cold nights and unanswered prayers, hope feels risky, like opening a door that might slam shut. When he offered help, she wanted to believe, but she was scared. "Nobody helps without wanting something back," she said quietly. That skepticism isn't cynicism. It's survival. When you've been hurt by kindness that came with strings, hope becomes a fragile, scary thing. You see, the pregnant homeless woman had learned the hard way that generosity sometimes masks expectation. People offer help, yes, but often with a price tag you only see later. Maybe it's a favor owed, a humiliating condition, or just a fleeting smile that fades. That kind of help leaves scars worse than the hardship itself. So, when a millionaire suddenly steps into her life, offering what seems too good to be true, her mind races to protect her heart. That fear of hope can keep us stuck far longer than the actual pain. This fear is real and valid. It's a protective mechanism shaped by betrayal and loss. Helping the homeless isn't just about providing resources. It's about rebuilding trust that's been shattered. The biggest challenge isn't finding a hotel room or clean clothes. It's convincing someone that kindness can be genuine. And this is where true acts of kindness need to be patient, consistent, and unconditional. The richest generosity in the world means nothing if it triggers suspicion and doubt. She didn't immediately accept the offer. Instead, she asked questions. Lots of them. What was the catch? Who else knew? What would happen next? This wasn't nagging. It was testing the waters. Anyone in her shoes would do the same. And he answered honestly. No hidden agenda. No expectations. Just help, plain and simple. Because in moments like these, transparency is the strongest foundation. Without it, even the best intentions crumble under the weight of mistrust. It's easy to forget that for people who have faced abandonment and hardship, hope can feel like a trap. That's why the millionaire's patience mattered as much as his offer. He didn't push, didn't demand a quick decision. He gave her time to process, to weigh the risk, to imagine what life could look like if she took this chance. Sometimes helping the homeless means stepping back and letting hope grow at its own pace, no matter how slow or fragile it seems. This fear of hope is something we all face at some point. Maybe not from homelessness, but from heartbreak, failure, or loss. We all carry that voice that says, "Be careful, don't get your hopes up." But what if the key to transformation is learning to trust again? To believe in kindness without strings? That's the hard part. And that's the story unfolding here, not just of a poor woman, but of anyone who's had to rebuild faith in the goodness of people. He realized his role wasn't just to give, but to show through actions that he was different. That generosity could be genuine. That this wasn't a social experiment or an emotional story made for clicks. This was real life. Helping the homeless meant being consistent, showing up, following through. Because trust is built by small, repeated acts, not grand gestures. And every day he stayed in her life was a step toward healing that fear. And though she was scared, something in her whispered to try, to risk a little hope, to allow herself to imagine a different future. That flicker of trust was the beginning of transformation. It's the moment when a poor woman, a pregnant homeless woman, starts to believe that maybe, just maybe, a rich man's help can be more than charity, can be a lifeline. And as the sun dipped lower outside the cafe window, that lifeline stretched farther than either of them could see. The fear was still there, but so was possibility. And in that delicate balance, a new chapter was about to begin. Actions speak louder than words, and after offering help, he knew he needed to back it up with more than promises. Maya's skepticism was justified. Life had taught her that charity often came with strings attached. So he introduced her to two key people, an assistant social worker and a lawyer, who would support her legally and emotionally. This wasn't about handing out charity. It was about creating a safety net. When generosity is paired with structure and respect, it transforms from a one-time act into a sustainable partnership. The assistant social worker explained how she would help Maya access resources without judgment, guiding her through programs that supported homeless pregnancy and maternal health. The lawyer reassured her about legal protections, ensuring her rights and her baby's rights would be upheld. This was a new kind of generosity, one that didn't stop at a meal or a night's shelter but invested in real, lasting change. Helping the homeless in this way is a profound act of empathy and humanity, far beyond the surface-level acts most people witness. Maya's eyes widened as she realized this offer wasn't a trap. No hidden agenda, no payback or strings. The presence of professional support gave her a sense of security she hadn't felt in months. This was a turning point, a true life-changing moment that began to shift her perception of help. When a rich man helps not just with money but with genuine resources, it restores hope where doubt once ruled. This wasn't a viral story or a social experiment. It was a true story of healing. He watched as Maya's posture shifted, her walls beginning to crumble bit by bit. She asked questions and the team answered honestly, patiently. That transparency was crucial. It was a reminder that dignity thrives in honesty and trust. Helping the homeless isn't about pity or control. It's about empowering someone to reclaim their story. And in that cafe, surrounded by quiet conversation and the smell of coffee, something bigger than charity was unfolding. He realized that many people confuse charity with generosity. Charity can sometimes feel transactional, a way to ease guilt. But true generosity is transformative. It's about presence, respect, and partnership. It's about walking alongside someone, not ahead of them. Maya wasn't a project. She was a person with agency. That mindset made all the difference. And it was a lesson he wanted to carry beyond this one encounter. The assistant social worker shared stories of other women who had been in Maya's shoes, women who had transformed their lives with support and guidance. It wasn't about instant miracles. It was about steady progress. Maya listened closely, absorbing every word. Helping the homeless pregnant woman wasn't just an emotional story to be told. It was a pathway paved with real resources and hope. This kind of kindness doesn't go viral overnight but changes lives profoundly. He saw the potential unfolding, not just for Maya, but for himself. This wasn't a moment for grand gestures or flashy headlines. It was a quiet revolution in how to help. The richest people often have the most to learn about giving. And here, in this small cafe, he was learning that generosity is less about money and more about humility, patience, and genuine care. That day marked a shift in his understanding of wealth. It wasn't about what he owned, but what he gave that truly mattered. Helping the homeless pregnant woman was no longer an act of charity. It was an act of justice, compassion, and shared humanity. And it started with proving that kindness can be unconditional, trustworthy, and free of expectations. As the meeting wrapped up, Maya looked around, a new sense of possibility dawning in her eyes. The journey ahead would be long and challenging, but for the first time in a while, she wasn't alone. And for him, this partnership was a lesson in how real transformation begins, not with money, but with respect and support. Healing isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. That's one of the hardest truths Maya and he both had to learn. After the initial offer, after the shock and disbelief, the real work began. There were doctor's appointments, paperwork, and quiet moments when hope clashed with fear. Healing takes time because it's not just physical. It's emotional, mental, and spiritual. Helping a pregnant homeless woman isn't about quick fixes or viral moments. It's about patience, consistency, and trust building day after day. She started to sleep better, finally resting in a clean, warm bed. That simple act, so basic to most, felt revolutionary to her. For months, nights had been cold, restless, filled with worry for the baby growing inside. Sleep became a metaphor for healing, something she hadn't known in a long time. That shift alone began to change everything. When you're well-rested, your mind clears, your body recovers, your spirit starts to mend. It's one of those life-changing moments that seem small but ripple deep. There were moments of frustration, too. Days when the past threatened to pull her back into despair. The fear of returning to the street, the shame of dependency. Healing isn't linear. It's messy, with setbacks that can feel crushing. He witnessed this, sometimes feeling helpless but learning the importance of simply being there. Helping the homeless means embracing imperfection, showing up even when progress slows or stalls. It's the slow, steady acts of kindness that make the difference. She began to open up more during their meetings, sharing feelings she'd buried for years. Vulnerability is scary, especially when trust has been broken. But it's also the gateway to healing. He realized how much healing is about connection, not just with others, but with yourself. Helping the homeless pregnant woman meant helping her rediscover her worth. And that's not something money can buy. It takes empathy and patience, qualities often missing in fast-paced charity stories. There were appointments with counselors and social workers who didn't just treat her as a case, but as a person. The support network grew around her, gently reinforcing that she was not alone. It reminded him that true generosity extends beyond one person. It's a community effort. Healing takes time, but it also takes a village. This transformation story was blossoming, rooted in consistent care and shared humanity. He started to see the impact in small ways. A smile that lasted a little longer, a laugh breaking through the silence. Those moments felt like milestones. They reminded him of the power of persistence and the importance of believing in someone's potential, even when they can't see it themselves. Helping the homeless isn't about instant gratification. It's about sowing seeds that bloom over time. The journey was far from over, but progress was undeniable. At times, he reflected on his own wounds, realizing healing is universal. Everyone carries scars, whether visible or hidden. The difference lies in how we confront them. This experience humbled him, showing that no matter how rich or successful, we all need healing. Sometimes the richest men find their greatest growth in helping the poorest women. It's a profound lesson in empathy and transformation that only real-life encounters can teach. He began adjusting his priorities, seeing that wealth without purpose is empty. Helping the homeless pregnant woman was no longer just an act of kindness. It became a catalyst for his own growth. They were both healing, in different ways, but connected through shared experiences and newfound trust. This wasn't a story about charity. It was a story about human resilience and the slow, beautiful process of becoming whole again. As the days passed, he felt a deepening commitment. Healing takes time, yes, but it also requires faith. Faith in people, in change, in the power of unexpected kindness to rewrite lives. And with every appointment, every conversation, and every quiet moment of rest, that faith grew stronger. The journey wasn't over, but both of them were walking it, step by step, heart by heart. Transformation is rarely one-sided. As Maya began her healing, he found himself shifting in ways he hadn't expected. For all his money and success, there was a hollow space inside him, a quiet yearning for meaning beyond balance sheets and boardrooms. Watching her resilience sparked something deep. It was like a mirror reflecting back the parts of himself he'd ignored. Vulnerability, humility, and the desire to truly connect. Sometimes, helping the homeless pregnant woman means helping yourself heal in the process. He started to question what real wealth meant. Was it the numbers in his bank account or the impact he could have on another person's life? The act of kindness toward Maya became more than a social experiment or a viral story. It was a journey toward empathy and purpose. Riches without meaning felt empty. Suddenly, generosity wasn't about showing off but about giving in ways that mattered, ways that created true transformation stories for both giver and receiver. The change was subtle at first. He found himself slowing down, listening more deeply, not just to Maya, but to others in his life. The walls he'd built around his heart began to crumble. He recalled times he'd overlooked people struggling around him, distracted by his own ambitions. Helping the homeless made him realize that connection is the real currency, and that no amount of money can replace genuine human empathy and understanding. He began incorporating these lessons into his daily life. Meetings felt less like battles and more like opportunities to understand different perspectives. Decisions weren't just about profit, but about people. He took time to mentor younger entrepreneurs about purpose-driven leadership, sharing how one unexpected encounter had shifted his worldview. This wasn't just philanthropy. It was a redefinition of success that he wanted others to experience too. At night, he reflected on his own upbringing and the sacrifices his mother made, realizing how that shaped his values. Seeing Maya struggle with hope and trust stirred memories of his own fears and failures. This empathy bridged the gap between their worlds. The poor woman wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was a catalyst for his transformation. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes those we seek to help end up helping us more than we imagine. He started attending community events, volunteering quietly, no cameras, no fanfare. These acts weren't for social media likes but genuine connection. His perspective on generosity evolved, from giving to get recognition to giving simply because it's the right thing to do. This internal shift made his acts of kindness feel authentic, grounded, and deeply rewarding. It was a change that only real-life encounters can spark. He also grew more patient with Maya, with himself, with the world. Transformation stories aren't instant. Healing isn't a race. This newfound patience allowed him to embrace uncertainty and vulnerability, traits he'd previously seen as weaknesses. Helping the homeless pregnant woman taught him that strength is found in openness and perseverance. That change begins within, often sparked by the quiet dignity of someone else's courage. As their relationship deepened, he realized that the real millionaire was not the one with wealth but the one rich in compassion and humanity. Maya's journey wasn't just about survival but about inspiring change in others, including him. They were intertwined now, two lives shifted by unexpected kindness and empathy, and that realization gave him a new sense of purpose and fulfillment. He knew this was only the beginning of a profound transformation for both of them. The millionaire was becoming a better man, not by his wealth, but by his heart. And Maya was starting to reclaim her life, piece by piece. The true story unfolding wasn't just hers or his. It was theirs, a shared journey toward healing, hope, and humanity. The day the baby arrived was nothing short of miraculous. A life-changing moment that no one in that quiet hospital room would forget. Maya, once a pregnant homeless woman, was now a mother holding a fragile new life in her arms. The journey from cold concrete to this warm, bright room was a testament to resilience, hope, and unexpected kindness. He was there, standing by her side, overwhelmed by emotion he hadn't expected. Watching new life begin is humbling, a reminder of what truly matters beyond wealth or status. The labor wasn't easy. There were moments of pain, fear, and uncertainty, but Maya's quiet strength shone through every contraction. He remembered thinking how much courage it took, not just to carry a child in those conditions, but to face the unknown future with determination. That baby was more than just a symbol of new life. It was a beacon of transformation for both Maya and himself. This wasn't just charity or a social experiment. It was humanity in its rawest form. When the baby finally cried, it was like a ripple across the room, washing away months of doubt and hardship. Tears streamed down Maya's face, not from pain, but from relief and joy. He felt his own eyes sting, realizing this moment wasn't about who had the most money, but who had the most heart. The tiny hands, the soft skin, the fragile breath. It was a reminder that life is precious and fragile, and sometimes the richest gifts come from the most unexpected places. The doctor assured them the baby was healthy, a small miracle given the circumstances. That news brought a wave of hope neither of them had dared to fully grasp before. He felt a surge of gratitude for every person who had helped make this possible, from the social workers to the medical team. This was a true story of generosity and healing, one that transcended social divides. Helping the homeless pregnant woman had become a shared journey, a testament to the power of kindness and trust. As Maya rested, holding her child close, he reflected on how far they'd come. This baby was the living proof that transformation stories aren't just inspiring tales. They are real lives shaped by empathy and action. He realized that being a millionaire wasn't about possessions but about the capacity to impact a life so profoundly. That day, he learned that true wealth is measured in moments like these, in the power to help someone bring new life into the world. The arrival of the baby also brought new challenges and responsibilities. Maya knew her life was forever changed. She was no longer just surviving. She was living for two now. The road ahead would require courage, resilience, and support. He understood that his role wasn't to rescue but to stand beside her as she built a new future. Helping the homeless meant respecting her strength and autonomy while offering a steady hand when needed. That hospital room was more than a physical space. It was a symbol of new beginnings. For Maya, it represented safety, hope, and the possibility of dreams she once thought lost. For him, it was a profound lesson in humility and the transformative power of unexpected kindness. Sometimes the richest experiences come from the most humbling moments. And this one was shaping to be a cornerstone in both their lives. He thought about the ripple effect this moment could have, how one act of generosity could change not just one life, but generations to come. That baby represented not just a new beginning for Maya, but for him too. A reminder that when we open our hearts, we all become richer. This wasn't about charity. It was about humanity and the shared journey of healing and hope. And as they left the hospital, the future looked brighter than ever. And though the story was far from over, the birth marked a pivotal chapter, a testament to what happens when empathy meets action, when a millionaire steps beyond his world to truly see a pregnant homeless woman. That moment wasn't just theirs. It belonged to everyone who believes in the power of kindness to change everything. After the baby arrived, Maya knew her life had shifted forever. She wasn't just a poor woman anymore. She was a mother with a future to build. The journey ahead was daunting, balancing the needs of her newborn while finding a way to study and work. But for the first time, she felt a spark of hope and determination that hadn't been there before. The millionaire who had helped her never tried to control her path. Instead, he offered support and space, allowing her to lead her own transformation story. It was important to her that this new chapter was hers to write. She wanted to walk with dignity, not dependency. She enrolled in community college courses, focusing on subjects that excited her: healthcare, social work, anything that would help her give back. He provided encouragement, resources, and sometimes just a listening ear. This wasn't about charity, it was about empowerment. Helping the homeless means giving someone the tools to build a life they're proud of, not just temporary shelter. Maya's days became a balancing act. Late-night feedings, early morning classes, job interviews, and moments of exhaustion. But with every challenge, her resolve strengthened. She often reflected on the kindness that had brought her here. Not just the material help, but the emotional support that made her believe in herself again. This transformation story wasn't a fairy tale. It was gritty, real, and filled with ups and downs. And that's what made it so powerful. He watched from the sidelines, proud but careful not to overshadow her journey. This wasn't his story to control. His role was to empower, not dictate. That distinction is critical when helping the homeless pregnant woman or anyone rebuilding their life. True generosity respects autonomy and celebrates progress, no matter how small. It's about walking beside, not in front. And Maya's growth was proof that empowerment beats pity every time. Together, they navigated obstacles, bureaucratic red tape, financial uncertainty, and the weight of past trauma. But they also celebrated victories: a passing grade, a new job offer, a moment of peace. Each step forward was a reminder that transformation is a process, not an event. It requires patience, resilience, and a community willing to show up. The millionaire's kindness was just the beginning of a broader support network that Maya was building around herself. Maya's story became a beacon for others facing similar struggles. She started volunteering at local shelters, sharing her experiences and inspiring those still in the trenches. Her journey showed that no matter how low you fall, there's always a chance to rise. And he saw how her courage was changing the narrative, not just for her, but for the whole community. Helping the homeless is a ripple effect, creating waves of hope and change. This new chapter also reshaped his understanding of success. He realized that wealth without impact is hollow. True fulfillment comes from lifting others and enabling their dreams. Helping the homeless pregnant woman had transformed his life as much as hers. Their stories were now intertwined, a testament to the unexpected power of kindness. And that realization fueled his commitment to continue supporting others with empathy and respect. He learned that the greatest gift isn't money or material aid. It's belief. Believing in someone's potential, even when they don't see it themselves. That belief can move mountains. And for Maya, it was the foundation of her new life. A life where she wasn't defined by her past, but by her courage and determination. This was the essence of true generosity, helping the homeless not just survive, but thrive. As Maya took her first steps into this new chapter, the millionaire knew the journey was far from over. But with every step she took, she rewrote her story and changed his perspective. Together, they proved that transformation is possible when empathy meets action, and when people are given the chance to lead their own lives. And with that, a fresh, hopeful future began to unfold. Sometimes, the greatest transformation isn't the one we expect. While Maya's journey from pregnant homeless woman to empowered mother was clear and inspiring, he came to realize that he, too, had been saved in ways he never imagined. His encounter with her peeled back layers of his own life. His fears, his emptiness, his misconceptions about wealth and kindness. The man who thought he was just helping was actually being helped, healed by the very humanity he sought to restore. He admitted to himself that his riches felt hollow before this experience. Money had bought comfort but not meaning. Seeing Maya's courage, her dignity amid hardship, forced him to confront his own vulnerabilities and purpose. This wasn't just an act of generosity. It was a mirror reflecting his soul. Helping the homeless pregnant woman sparked a transformation inside him. A journey of self-discovery and redemption that went far beyond any financial transaction. Their stories intertwined, creating a bond neither had anticipated. As Maya reclaimed her life, he found new reasons to live fully and authentically. It was humbling to recognize that wealth isn't a shield against pain or loneliness, and that true richness comes from connection, empathy, and giving. Helping the homeless isn't just a noble cause. It's a pathway to healing for both giver and receiver, and this was his greatest lesson. He shared this realization openly, hoping to inspire others who might feel trapped in the emptiness of success without purpose. The millionaire who once defined himself by possessions now defined himself by the impact he could have on others. This shift wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It was a rebirth of values, sparked by an unexpected kindness that changed everything. Life-changing moments often come disguised as simple encounters. Reflecting on the journey, he acknowledged how fragile and beautiful humanity is. Both he and Maya had been broken in different ways, yet their paths converged to create something healing and whole. That understanding reshaped how he approached his business, relationships, and even his own self-worth. He became a mentor not just in wealth, but in empathy, encouraging others to see beyond money and into the heart of generosity. This transformation wasn't a neat package. It was messy, ongoing, and deeply human. He learned that humility is the foundation of real generosity, and that sometimes the richest person in the room is the one who has learned to give without expectation. Helping the homeless pregnant woman reminded him that true success is measured by the lives we touch and the love we share, not the assets we accumulate. He became more engaged in his community, volunteering, supporting causes close to his heart, and using his platform to amplify stories like Maya's. This was his way of paying forward the grace he'd received. The millionaire who was once detached now felt connected, to people, to purpose, and to the true meaning of wealth. His transformation was a testament to the power of empathy and unexpected kindness. The man who thought he was a giver realized he was also a receiver, of hope, healing, and a second chance. That realization brought peace and a renewed sense of mission. Helping the homeless pregnant woman wasn't just about changing her life. It was about changing his own. Their intertwined journeys proved that sometimes, saving another is the greatest salvation of all. And as their story continued to unfold, It was clear that this was only the beginning of a shared path, a journey marked by generosity, growth, and humanity. The millionaire and the poor woman, both transformed by an act of kindness, walking forward together into an unknown but hopeful future. True wealth isn't measured by what you hoard or the numbers in your bank account. It's what you give away freely, without expecting anything in return. This story shows us that generosity isn't just about money. It's about empathy, humanity, and the small acts of kindness that can rebuild lives and restore hope. Sometimes, when a pregnant homeless woman quietly asks, "Is there something left?" what's truly revealed is how much we have left inside ourselves: compassion, dignity, and the power to change the world around us. In the final scenes, Maya holds her baby close, a symbol of new beginnings and resilience. The millionaire watches her with a subtle smile, his shoulders lighter, his heart fuller. Their lives, once so different, are now woven together by shared transformation. It's a touching encounter that reminds us all, when we choose to help the homeless, when we embrace unexpected kindness, we're not just changing someone else's story, we're rewriting our own. That's the true meaning behind this viral story, this emotional story of generosity and hope. This journey teaches us that life-changing moments don't always come in grand gestures. Often they arrive quietly, through empathy, respect, and the courage to look beyond ourselves. Helping the homeless pregnant woman wasn't a charity case. It was a lesson in humanity and connection, and that lesson stays with us long after the story ends. So next time you see someone struggling, remember, sometimes the simplest question, "Is there something left?" reveals the most left in us. If the story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with friends and family, because sometimes what we leave behind is everything someone else needs to begin again. Stories like this one remind us that behind every act of kindness is a ripple effect, one that can transform lives in ways we never imagined. Subscribe to Millionaire Breakthrough for more real stories that restore your faith in people and show the power of unexpected kindness. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next inspirational video, where a poor mechanic changes a millionaire's heart at a wedding, proving that empathy and generosity come in all shapes and sizes. Because here, it's not just about money, it's about the humanity that connects us all.